Hillary Clinton's epic cross-country blame tour continues tonight. In a series of interviews promoting her book, What Happened, Clinton insists that what happened is everyone else screwed up or was out to get her. She said as much this morning on the Today Show. Watch.
When it comes to the self-inflicted wounds, when you look at the list of them, and you go through them in the book, did you make enough mistakes yourself to lose the election without any of the other things you talk about?
Well, I will say no, Matt. I don't think that will surprise you.
So how'd she lose? Well, in Hillary Clinton's telling, the list of guilty parties is long, and not surprisingly, does not include her. In an interview with Vox, she blamed the media, whose members, almost to a person, supported her in the race, but somehow sabotaged her campaign anyway.
I don't think the press did their job in this election, with very few exceptions. Is it that it's just not as, enticing to the press because the other guy's running a reality TV show, which is like hard to turn away from. And whatever he says, we think is kind of goofy, but hey, it's good TV.
And on NBC, she blamed an unseen conspiracy by none other than the diabolical puppet master, Vladimir Putin.
There was certainly, we know, a plan from Putin and the highest levels of the Kremlin to influence our election. We now know that it was everything from Facebook ads and phony people acting like Americans who were Russians. We know so much more than we did even when I turned the manuscript in.
Oh, but it continues. It wasn't just Putin. On The View, she blamed Bernie Sanders for daring to challenge her inherited right to the job. Watch.
You talk about Bernie Sanders, and you say he shares responsibility. What do you mean by that?
I know what it's like to lose because I lost in 2008 to President Obama. As soon as I lost, I turned around, I endorsed him. Yeah. I worked hard for him, and I didn't get that respect from him and his supporters.
They don't respect me. And if that wasn't enough, all of it, Hillary also, it goes without saying, blamed sexists. And that would include the majority of married women in America. They voted for Donald Trump, apparently because they hate women too.
I write in the book about an incredible conversation I had with Sheryl Sandberg. She says, look, the research is absolutely clear. The more professionally successful a man becomes, the more likable he is. The more professionally successful a woman becomes, the less likable she is. When a woman walks into the arena and says, I'm going for this myself, it really does have a dramatic effect on how people perceive.
That, according to noted social scientist Sheryl Sandberg. For the record, Hillary has not yet blamed the Illuminati or the Trilateral Commission for her loss, but the bookstore is still young, and we'll follow it. In the meantime, Mark Steyn is an author and columnist, and he joins us tonight. Mark, what do you make of all this?
It's beginning to remind me of O.J. hunting for the real killers. The wider she looks for the real killers of her campaign, the more you suspect, and in fact, the more your view is confirmed that the answer is closer to home, considerably closer to home.
That's a perfect analogy. So what is the effect of the Democratic Party? So, I mean, not that I'm a reliable Democratic voter. It's really not my business, but I'm a watcher of this stuff. And I'm thinking, if you're the Democrats, Trump's having some problems. You want to make the most you can of that. And into the calculation comes Hillary Clinton, this ghost from the past, to talk about herself. Is that helpful for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's actually very revealing. I mean, if you look at Bernie, for example, Bernie is plowing on now to try and introduce socialized health care in America, right, because to him, American health care isn't wrecked enough, so he'd like to take it to the next level. So Bernie, in fairness, whatever one believes about, whatever one thinks about him, is plowing on with a policy concern. Hillary is writing a book that actually has nothing to say about policy, has nothing to say about where the Democrats should go, and is instead mired in on all kinds of weird issues, like including, as you say, among the people she blames are, quote, phony people acting like Americans, unquote. I don't even know what that means, but it indicates a high degree of paranoia. If you're out there on the street and you're worried that all around you are phony people acting like Americans. I might even be one of them, Tucker. You can't tell anymore. That's how crazy it is.
And it's also, and I've suspected this for 25 years, actually, since I started covering the Clintons, it's not very clever. So she's got this line in her book, and I know that you're an Orwell scholar, so I wanted to run this by you. She compares the Trump campaign to the state in the novel 1984. And she says the aim of state propaganda is to, quote, make you question logic and reason and to sow mistrust toward exactly the people we need to rely on, our leaders, the press, experts who seek to guide public policy based on evidence. So she's saying basically the message of George Orwell is you need to trust the government, the experts, and the media. Is that, do you think, a fair reading of Orwell's message?
No, of course not. And the idea, by the way, I mean, it would be, I mean, to revive the old line about history repeating itself, first tragedy, then farce. The idea of a remake of 1984 with Trump and his Billy Bush tape and his Rosie O'Donnell jokes and all the rest of it. The fact is there is a grain of truth in what she says. The media loved her. The media looked at her adoringly. But the media, even in their bias, are sufficiently human that Trump was just too interesting. And the fact is that every time Trump got up on stage, you never knew what he was going to say. He might go on about the Iranian nuclear program, or he might go on about how Macy's stock price had tanked since they'd stopped carrying Trump ties. You never knew what he was going to talk about. Hillary was the most canned and robotic presidential candidate. And that was the issue. The idea that that it wasn't self-inflicted wounds, yes, it was, because at heart she had no rationale for her candidacy, and she wasn't a good enough candidate to
but you're missing it.
that.
What she's saying is you're a deeply shallow man, Mark Steyn. You're not smart enough to dig into the complex policies she proposed. Well, I actually read her campaign book, her infrastructure plan, among many others. The single largest collection of banalities I've ever seen. There was no substance there. And yet she's trying to convince us that, like, we missed it because we're not as sophisticated as she is.
No, and in fact, in fairness to Donald Trump, he may be the reality show candidate, as she says, but he stood up on that first day when he went on about Mexico's not sending us our best people, they're sending us all these rapists and murderers. Right. And whatever you feel about it, he introduced the issue into the campaign, which was immigration and the wall. And so you can mock the joke candidate, but actually one of the things that Trump did that was incredibly useful is that he destroyed all the boring, tedious conventions of professional American politics that resulted in the year 2016 in one party offering the wife of the previous president and the other party offering the son and the brother of two previous presidents.
That's exactly right.
And actually, and I say this as the subject of the tyrannical crown you guys threw off, that ought to be unseemly in a republic of 300 million people. And she should have known that, and Jeb Bush should have known that. Your husband was president. That's enough. Clear off. Go to Martha's Vineyard. Go to the Bahamas. Get lost. Get out of here. And the same for Jeb Bush, too. Your dad was president and your brother was president. And they weren't so indispensable that we need a third one. Clear off, you creeps. That's unseemly in a republic. And if I sound like a phony guy trying to pass myself off as an American, so be it. You real Americans should try saying that.
I just want that in print so I can keep it in my wallet and consult it once a week. Mark Steyn, thank you. That was great.
Always a pleasure, Tucker.
Thank you. Well, we almost forgot yet another of Hillary's excuses, the malevolent figure of FBI Director Jim Comey.
I think the determining factor was the intervention by Comey on October 28th. I mean, as I write in the book, and I could have put much more into the book, and, you know, independent observers like Nate Silver and others say yes, but for that intervention, I would have won.
Richard Goodstein advised the Clinton campaign in both 2008 and 2016. He joins us on the set tonight. Richard, this is the key question I've never understood, and I mean it with all sincerity. If Hillary Clinton is such a strong woman, she's always telling us she is, why is she playing the victim?
Well, she's playing the victim because she was victimized. Let me indulge me with the first point that Mark just made about O.J. The single most telling moment of this whole Russia investigation was James Comey testifying that in the 9 times that he talked with Donald Trump, Trump never once asked, what did the Russians do? Which was like O.J. never asking the police what happened to Nicole. He knew.
Okay,
Trump
so
knows.
That's evidence right there.
No, well,
that
it's
he's
not,
colluding.
It's
the dog that didn't
his
bark.
Son,
is that what you're saying? This is like a
has
Sherlock
already
Holmes
admitted,
story.
His son has already admitted to collusion, right? He's
Yeah,
already admitted to collusion. You know, it's like going to rob the bank. Unfortunately, he claims the vault was empty, but he definitely tried to rob the bank.
Right. Okay. Let me just ask you a bigger question, though. So she blames sexism, as she always does and always has throughout the course of her career, which I have followed closely. I'm not a Hillary hater, by the way, at all. I think she's got good qualities. But the sexism trope is annoying because it's so stupid and it's also so patronizing. The majority of married women in America voted for Donald Trump. Are they sexist?
Ask Carly Fiorina. Have you asked her whether she was subjected to sexism? Have you asked other leaders of industry?
You're missing it. I'm not saying sexism doesn't exist. I'm saying Hillary Clinton is saying that sexism among American voters, their distaste for powerful women, strong women like herself, led to her defeat. And my question is, if sexism played such a role, why did the majority of married women, not men, women, vote for Hillary? It does not make sense, unless they're sexist too, in which case it's a conspiracy more vast than I even imagined.
Right. So she actually did better among women than Barack Obama had. Look, the fact of the matter is...
She lost married women.
What she would tell you is that all these messages that the Russians and the Macedonians, your favorite, paid for, that went into people who were undecided in these swing counties in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, actually influenced opinion. Just like your billions of advertisers on Fox News want to change people's minds.
I mean, it's a little bit patronizing because what she's saying is, opposition to me is unreasonable. Either you were hoodwinked by a foreign power or you were blinded by your own bigotry. She doesn't allow for what actually happened, which is a lot of people took a sober look at her and Trump and said, you know what, I've got problems with him, but I prefer him to her because I just don't like her. She's not even open to that possibility.
To listen to this discussion, and certainly what Mark said, you would think that Trump won in the way that LBJ beat Goldwater or that Reagan beat Mondale. He got under 63 million and she got 66.
But I'm not contesting that.
Well, no, you're suggesting that somehow there was this vast movement of people towards Trump.
I'm saying that she lost, and there are a bunch of reasons she lost. And I personally have always thought that the Comey stuff did play a role in her loss. I've always thought that.
The polls show that.
Yeah, the Russian stuff is insane. The sexism stuff is stupid. I think the Comey stuff is probably kind of real. But there are also other factors, like she didn't have a campaign message, and she ignored the economy, and she's the wife of a president with no real achievements. I mean, there are lots of other things, and people just didn't like her.
Right.
But none of those things are even a possibility to her. It's always you're a bigot or you were lied to.
No. First of all, I don't know if you've read her book yet. I will confess I haven't.
No.
I'm going to her a book event for her in Washington next Tuesday, so I'll read it then. She's not saying that she didn't make mistakes. She, of course, says she did. What she's saying is, notwithstanding whatever mistakes were made, message, whatever, that on the eve of the Comey letter, she was substantially ahead. And imagine if the tables were turned, and on that day, October 29th, Comey said, the Trump campaign, we believe, may well be colluding with the Russians, and we're investigating that. Think where Donald Trump would be today.
I guess, but there's no evidence he can. And the Russian stuff is just dumb. And by the way, can I say one last thing? She doesn't seem strong to me. I'm not hitting her on this. She seems very fragile to me and very self-protective. This is someone who can't face her own weaknesses. And that's not a sign of strength.
Yeah,
it's the
I think
opposite.
if she were that weak, she wouldn't be going out there putting up with questions from a lot of people on things that are, frankly, not a very pleasant topic, right, of her loss. and what I think she's done, though, is write a book that a future female candidate will use as a touchstone to know not what to do or what not to do, but at least learn from her experience.
Yeah, anybody who reads the Hillary Clinton campaign memoir to win.
It's to be informed.
Lots of luck.
It's to be informed.
Richard, thank you very much.
My pleasure.